August 26th at 6 p.m. As part of our call to order, we normally have introductions of who is here, and we'll do that. I'm Jack Breyer. I'm the chair of our little event, and to my right,
I'm Cheryl Charles, chair of the Westminster School Board.
And to my left,
Lynn Morgan on the AthGraph from Athens.
Ginger Majowski from AthGraph from Athens.
we're doing introductions. This is your time.
David Major from Westminster.
Very good, David. You're only 1 minute late. I'm impressed. All right. We also have online. Jessa, are you able to speak to introduce yourself? And I'm not sure who else might be online.
Yeah, I'm Jessa West Clark from Grafton.
And she really does have a physical appearance, even though there's just sort of a big black space on the screen. And I think that's everybody that's we anticipate being here. Thank you all for joining us. Let me start with adjustments to the agenda. I actually have one. It is potential admission, potential transfer of student, and we will make that an item 5. So with that known, tonight's discussion is largely it's a discussion with all of you that are online, and that is the issue about our upcoming vote in all 3 communities about the transfer of assets and debts between the current school board, school district, and the emerging Westminster School District. And I'm wondering if we might have either Cheryl or David. Actually, why don't we start with you, Cheryl, because you got to walk us through what this is all about.
Well, there is an election on August 31st. It's the next step in a series of requirements from the State Board of Education to officially allow Westminster to become once again a town school district. So that process has taken us to this point in time where initially Westminster voted to withdraw from the Wyndham Northeast Union Elementary School District. Athens and Grafton voters voted to approve that withdrawal. So that part's been done. A school board has been elected. And now we're at the place where our next requirement to meet the standards of the state board was to agree on the financial terms of that withdrawal. And that is what voters in Athens, Grafton, and Westminster will vote on August 31st. In addition, voters in Westminster will be asked to vote on whether or not to expand the current 3-person board to a 5-person board. So those are the basics, but we're completely open to questions, and David or someone or Jack may want to add something at this time.
What I would just say is we do have a loan schedule of these that we'll try to have posted up on the on the WNESD website in the next day or so. I'm hoping Ward and Ricky Adams, with their help, we'll get that to people, and it'll sort of explain what we're talking about here. This is, as many of you may know, we actually don't own a building in Grafton. We don't own a building in Athens. The town owns the Grafton Elementary School. The 2 buildings that Athens and Grafton and Westminster own are in Westminster, and it'd be a little weird if they continued to own them after Westminster became its own district. And those buildings are not only assets, but they come with certain liabilities because there was work done on the building. When was it the roof, right? Was that you guys?
Gymnasium.
The gymnasium, the whole wing out there.
Right. And and that's what we're talking about is resolving the debt attached to that, and so that we're attempting to both transition the assets to Westminster as part of this, and to transfer what remains of the debt to pay for that work. So that's it. I will ask everyone's indulgence that's online. If you have a question, because there's a relatively small number of people attending, don't wait for permission because I can't really see your hands. Just unmute yourself and tell us who you are and your question. I think it's just easier, and we'll do that. If like 10 people speak at once, let's deal with that. And I see Kathy Ciano up and ready with a hand. So Kathy, go for it. And you'll have to put your there you go. I think you've unmuted, so
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for meeting. It's been a while since everybody got together, so we know what the information is.
Yep.
Are there any other debts that Grafton needs to be aware of?
To the best of my knowledge, we've resolved all the assets and debts that the minor stuff, and particularly the assets, because that was an issue early on, have been merged. So the same thing is true of over the last couple of years, since the district runs as a single entity, all the debt and all the surpluses have run together. I do anticipate that when we formally separate, that, and I've stated this in my expectation, that either the surplus or the deficit will be allocated between the two schools, probably based on a population basis. But right now, I can't tell you, a year in advance, whether there'll be any asset, any deficit, or anything, because we've just barely begun the school year. But that would be my expectation. Generally, surplus, we tend to run a small surplus. It's not going to be big. There are some complications with the fact that we're getting third-party emergency relief money, the ESSER money. So that may generate a surplus for us, but at the moment I don't anticipate to be significant, because most of the ESSER money that we'll be bringing in will be dedicated to emergency issues, repairs, or to facilities, or to help with the management of work on the Athens School District, the Athens buildings, Grafton's buildings, Grafton's buildings, Westminster's buildings, Rockingham's, etc.
Jack, can you add something?
Yes, you absolutely, please do.
So Kathy, in addition, I would simply add, for the election on August 31, the financial terms have only to do with transferring the two buildings back to Westminster, those two school buildings that exist within the town of Westminster, and transferring the debt. There's nothing else voters are being asked to do anything about at this time, because to Jack's point, any additional information will be, we don't anticipate any surprises around that. But for now, what's most important for voters is that's all we're voting on, to return the two buildings and to assume the debt by Westminster that it incurred here.
If you got a follow-up, fire away. I don't know if Mary Pater's got a question or not, but why don't you, anything else, Kathy, or you?
No, I just didn't want any surprises for Grafton.
I try to keep those to a minimum. I hope we've done fairly well with that, but
Fair enough.
you know who to call if you see one,
Thank you.
we'll try to make it a minimum. Thanks a lot, Mary.
Yeah.
Did you? You've shown up on the screen. Did you just tap something by accident, or are you asking a question? Yes, that's my answer. Anyone else have a question? Well, let me just throw some facts at you, because I think they're important, and let me actually come back and get those facts. Hold on a second. You'll have to bear with me while I diddle with my screen yet again. All right. As I said, I have the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank is managing the debt, or just benefiting by the debt. And the debt works out to an average of $95,000 a year when it's distributed. The bond in its current structure, the last payment is on November 15th of 2025, we, based on sort of rough calculus, we're assuming that's in the neighborhood of 475 plus interest. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, depending on interest rates and whether we should do something to try to get a better deal. But that's, in rough terms, the bolus of money that's owed. We tend to pay, in addition, a little under $6,000 a year in debt service. And I would assume, so that's six times 5 years, that works out to under 30,000. So if you throw those two numbers together, that is in the ballpark of what we anticipate will be transferred to the Westminster School District.
Kim has her mic off of the town of Grafton.
Oh,
I don't know if she wants to talk.
yes, please do. Thank you. Kim?
I was, Jack, I was just curious, when we do separate, would we be eligible for small school grants again?
If only. The one, as I've said in public and in writing, a lot of Act 46 was really a way to have everybody look over there while they did something over here. And one of the main things that they did was they effectively killed the small schools grant. So that, when we ran numbers, when Hardy and our friends in Athens ran numbers, they ran them assuming that grant will not be available anymore.
Okay.
But quite frankly, the only thing that's scary on the horizon for us is this business about Act 173, which I've talked to many of you about, and that is whether or not the state is going to continue to honor its commitment to funding special ed, if they're going to try to block grant it and stick everyone with a bill. We should not be disproportionately impacted. At the high school, they will be, but that's not us. So that's where we think we stand. But 6 kids come in with something really intensive that needs help with, that could blow up. But that's where we are at the moment. We've already, everybody. I'm just going to say, we have already, jumped off the diving board in terms of the separation. We are basically on the way to the water and hope there's water in there. But we believe that the school district, as Athens and Grafton, is large enough to be stable, and we'll see if that turns out to be true or not in the coming years.
Remind people you're still in the Northeast.
Yes, we the district's name until we get you all together to come up with a good name to change it to something like Grafton Athens or Athens Grafton, depending on which town you're in. We'll clean that up. It'll probably still have unified elementary school district to make the state happy, but we'll just call it the Athens Grafton or Grafton Athens district. So there we are. Who is? I have someone else, if you don't mind. Any other questions for us, Kim, before we bring on the next person? Did the person? Okay, I got a thumbs up from Kim. Which, by the way, when you get a thumbs up from Kim, that means everybody in Grafton needs to vote for this. Official thumbs up from Kim. So there we are. Are there any other questions anybody has? Because I really, this is the speak now part of the ceremony. And you can, yeah, go ahead, Kim.
I do have another question. So I see Westminster is going to vote for the additional school board members. And how do we stand with Athens Grafton? What is our school board members going to look like? And is that happening in March?
We are going to have that discussion over the next couple of months and talk to all of you about that, because there's two approaches. We could essentially have what we have now, which is this, we now have this 2-2-2 business. We could go to like a 3-3 situation, or we could do it based on relative population. which would be a 3-2 kind of situation. I'm guessing. We don't have official census figures unless you've got them in a file somewhere. Didn't think so. And I don't know if the discrepancy, because it's not obviously exactly 3-2, whether or not that's going to fly or not. I would, and I don't know how people feel at this point about whether they want town representatives or feel that we're sufficiently integrated that they'd be happy with a version of what we've been doing. And I anticipate hearing from you all loudly and clearly and going to individuals, select board and other meetings to start to gather information. And we'll have that part of our planning process over the next several months.
So when we do, if and when we do join as an Athgraft school, are we again assuming the Athens school like we had in the past when we were a joint contract?
Great question. The Athens building was sold. We literally slipped that in under the deadline and gave it to they own it as a municipal center. I think that they describe it as Athens' newest white elephant, but I appreciate that they did take it over.
It's possibly changing to the new office.
Is it going to be the new office?
We don't know.
You guys
That's-
might actually have space to work in? That'd be shocking.
It's in discussion.
Well, then there you go. That's we may have a discussion with the town about whether or not they would like to the town of Grafton, whether they'd like to convey the district back their the building they own. But that's I'm not in any rush to do that, and that'll be at their pleasure and in some sort of discussion at some point. But again, that's more an issue for when we start to run into things about whether or not we can make significant material improvements to the building without having the title. And I don't know the answer to that yet. That could come up soon because of the ESSER funds, but quite frankly, I don't know that yet and need to find out. So that's the only action item I see on the horizon.
Okay.
All right. You're not as happy. You were looking happier a minute ago.
She's smiling.
Okay. Well, in any case, that's what we've got. Anyone else have questions? Kathy, you got another one, or if any of the other folks that are on the line have a question, joke, wisecrack, that's all fine here.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah, Jessa, you have the benefit of being on the board, so go ahead.
Well, I have an unrelated question. When are we going to discuss the traffic situation in Grafton tonight, or is that for the next meeting? Do we have a time before school starts?
I am perfectly happy to put it on the agenda. This was a meeting that, and this is my error, I didn't ask Angela to show up. I actually kind of thought she might, but she didn't. And I don't know who, we can certainly raise it and talk about it. And I will bring it up with with administration. What I suggest we do is after we're done with this part, we'll add it as a second item. We've got a lot of space between 5 and 9, so we can make it an item 6 and discuss it because it's not on the agenda. It'll only be a discussion item. We can do a resolution and validate that resolution at the following meeting when we'll actually have people in tow for that. I am anticipating talking to Chris and to Angela in the next couple of days, so we can. I'd like to hear about this at that point. Does that make good sense to you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we're all for accommodation here. Oh, by the way, Jess is our new vice chair and consigliere for the supervisory union. So if there's any problems anybody has anywhere in southern Vermont, jessa.westclark@WNESD.com. And I want you to all know that. So there you go.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. So any other questions, anybody? Anybody on the board want to talk to this? Because I'm talked out.
I think Cheryl has something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make just a couple of other comments, and I was thinking, David, you might have some additional things to say. I want to restate that the Wyndham Northeast Union Elementary School District, in the view of the State Board of Education, remains intact. It happens to be made up of students in Athens and Grafton. One of the parts of the decision-making process for them was that this newly created district would remain. So that's the case. Westminster withdraws from it, but you still have a Union Elementary School District made up of Athens and Grafton. There might be changes in the future, as Jack was saying. One might propose to change the name or things of that kind, but technically and legally, for the immediate future, if not longer, it remains the Union Elementary School District.
Well, yeah, let me just, because I've talked to many of my colleagues both in Athens and Grafton about this, and people in town. We felt that there were two issues that we needed to deal with. We needed to have the State Board of Education agree to the principle that forcibly unified districts could separate. And the best case statement of that was to help Westminster make their move as a separate district. Now, we did that for a couple of reasons. One, felt that we'd get much more pushback if we tried to separate into three. We were able to state to the state board that we were not doing a dissolution because that's a different process and we might not have won that one. And finally, the Athens and Grafton have worked as a unified district, well, in all but legal formality for close to 20 years, I think, at this point. And we just felt that that's an issue that could be best saved for another day. If people decide in Athens or Grafton that it benefited them to have us go back before the state board in another year or so to split out as two districts, I would not stand in the way of that. I would just simply say that the stability issues that were a concern when Westminster left us could be far more a concern, and I'd want to know what the fiscal consequences of that are. I think the smaller you are, the more variation you get, and both Athens and Grafton here. Remember having 15% swings in elementary school taxes because of the number of bodies in the school, and that's something I'm kind of concerned about. And so when we get, if we ever get to that point, we'll have that discussion. It'll probably be with a different board chair, but whatever. That's a discussion to have at that point.
Okay, then I'd like to just add to all of that, then to remind everybody that on August 31, the vote is only to transfer the debt for the gymnasium back to Westminster and to transfer the two buildings. Once this election occurs on August 31, next step for all of us is to report to the State Board of Education in writing on September 8th. We're to tell them about the series of steps we've fulfilled that they asked us to fulfill, this being the most recent. So we would report the election results, for example. And then on September, did I say the right date? It's September 8th is when we submit the paperwork. And then September 15, we present again to the State Board of Education to let them know that we have fulfilled these obligations and we're proceeding on course. And we expect to be not only with full responsibility, but full authority by July 1 of 2022, which is what they had said. We have some additional questions we'd like to ask them about, because we've also been tasked, the Westminster Board, to work with the Union Elementary School District Board on the budget. And so we're starting that process as soon as those numbers are available to us. But at any rate, immediate next steps are what I've just described. And if there are any questions about that, we're happy to respond. And before we open it up to that, David Major has had such a strong and powerful and positive role in all of this. I just wondered if you wanted to make any comments for the kind of the citizenry out there.
Well, there's precious few people from Westminster on the listening at this point, and that I think is partly what I have heard from people, which is that there's a bit of fatigue about why we're going through more elections and votes when it feels like many years ago now, we voted not to merge. Athens voted not to merge. Grafton voted not to merge. We were forced into merger. We voted to withdraw much more recently, and reestablish the Westminster School District. And it feels like, well, we used to have a Westminster School District. Why are we having to go through all of these votes again and approvals of, for all three kinds of approvals of any new arrangement? Well, the answer is obviously we know that from the state standpoint, it's a brand new district. It's not the old Westminster district, even though what we're trying to recreate is something similar to what we had back several years ago. So, and for many years before that. I want to acknowledge that is a fact in the town, and it's simply at this point trying to go through the process of reestablishing the district.
I think David and I secretly believe that the state decided to make the process as annoying as humanly possible and going to discourage other people from doing it. And I really do appreciate that the three communities and their citizens have been good sports about what has been really kind of an exercise in outrageousness that this whole thing got consolidated in the first place. We still stand pretty much as an island of people that have determined that we're going to jump through those hoops just to prove it can be done. And so far, we've been the success. There are some folks lining up behind us that are still having a little trouble with this, but I'm hoping that when we get done, that the state board and the rest of our state educational folks may realize that it's time to simplify the process, and just throwing up unnecessary barriers doesn't discourage folks. And I hope we'll be a good example in that part. So, is there anyone else with a question, or and by the way, the people that have asked questions can ask more.
Kim's up.
Kim is on. So Kim.
I was just gonna ask, I know you guys don't have a crystal ball, but
Oh, that's absolutely right.
what are the chances? Is the state gonna leave us be now for a while? Do you foresee if more towns go down this road that we're gonna run into trouble?
Well, one of the things that I have heard is that we're considered plucky, and I think that might be a good thing. So the fact, when we had our last set of meetings, it was not adversarial, although we did have one person who was a little bit, but it seemed like there was some acknowledgement that when we said we wanted to do this, we weren't kidding. And are there other things coming up? Sure, but we want a list. We can play vaccine and masking. That's fun. We can talk about Act 1 and 73. That's a complete mess. There's still the possibility that the state may decide at some point to consolidate supervisory unions. You never know when that could come up. So if you're saying, will they have learned their lesson? The answer is, have you met any of them? So so that's just, that's our reality.
Okay. And thank you for all that you guys have done. It's been awesome.
Well, I got to tell you, my quiet cohort over here have been huge helps, and Cheryl and David have been thought partners since we originally decided that if we were going to oppose Act 46, we ought to get serious about it. And much of Those of you in Grafton know my organizational skills are legendary for not being there at all. And I really do appreciate all the work that they have done to help me get through this. So there you go. Well, thank you. If there are no further questions, we do have, it is 6:30, actually, it's not too bad. We do have a few items on our agenda that are not this, but I'd also want to make sure that we, if anybody comes in late and or has a question later on, feel free to share that. And we'll go from there. I will tell you that this kind of community forum is where we have people in the room and we have people online is something I'm hoping we get to play with when town meeting comes, just to warn you all that that's a discussion we're going to be having, because I'd like it if we can try to run joint town meetings when it comes to the school district part this March. I don't know if it's doable, but that's an item that you'll be hearing more about in coming next couple of months. So there you go. Thank you all, and stay in, because we're going to talk about transferring a student and the driveway entrance, and you know this is scintillating conversation. So there you go.
You might say this is not a normal business meeting, it really was.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have a couple of business items. This was principally that, and like I said, if during the course of this anybody has another question, we hold open meetings in this district, and you're always invited to be there and to ask questions on any item. So just know that. We are going to move on. There is actually we do have, our 4 is this, which is the joint informational setting. We do have a 5 and 6, and if you'll read them off for us, Wynn, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, you want to read 5 and 6 for me?
Okay, so 5 is a discussion on a transfer of a student, and 6 will be discussion on the driveway entrance to the Grafton School.
Right. So with the indulgence of our audience and with the indulgence of my colleagues, we'll move on to those items, if we might. So let's talk about transfer of a student. Can you speak to that, Cheryl, without giving names? What's going on there?
I can describe the request. I think you have additional information about the procedure.
Yes.
We have someone who is now working in the school district who has been told that her child has been approved to come to the Westminster School, but said further that she's been told that she needs to petition for her to come here. And so she brought that to Congress, and I have brought it to the board.
Right, and our superintendent isn't here because he understood this was largely informational, but I ordered him about this, and he said, yes, what we need is a motion to approve that transfer. So, and to the best of my knowledge at this point, there was curiosity, there's some curiosity from the Rockingham board as to whether or not there would be any funding coming with that, and I had responded that it would be my preference that if they have somebody from Rockingham that would like to come to Westminster or Grafton, that would be easier. If at some point that becomes an issue, we may come back at this. But right for tonight, all we need to do is have the board, the Unified District Board, and I'll need you, Jessica, for this because the quorum to approve that transfer, and just I'll entertain a resolution to do that.
Can I ask a question?
You can. Are you going to make that? But before I need somebody to move that.
So moved.
There we go. Now
Okay.
you can ask a question.
This transfers from Rockingham, is that correct?
Is Westminster? Oh, is it to Westminster from Rockingham or from Rockingham to Westminster?
From Rockingham to Westminster.
Okay. So then really we're the only ones that need to approve it, and again, this is very similar to the issue in reverse when there was some discussion about somebody going to Rockingham. Are we going to charge them, or are we going to just say, welcome aboard? So we do have a posted tuition, but it has been my hope that the towns of the three constituent towns would not stand in the way of having a student go to a different school if the receiving school. My hope is that this board would approve that transfer from, as you understood it,
Rockingham.
from Rockingham to Westminster.
Is this student moving, or is this just a?
I think there are some confidential circumstances.
Jessica.
Josh?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, it's Jessica.
Yeah.
I have two things.
Yeah.
We've actually talked. So the transfer issue was raised a couple of years ago for a staff member's children, and yes,
Yeah.
it did have to go to the board. And there is no transfer of funds. It's one of those cases where the state has decided that at the end of the day, it sort of evens out, because kids who move mid-year, the money's allocated at the beginning of the year to their home district.
Right.
And whether they transfer to a different school or they move, et cetera, that money does not go with them. In this case, I know some of the confidential circumstances, and I don't know, have you talked to Chris about whether this is being done as a normal transfer like that?
Now, in this particular case, this is not an intra-district transfer. It is a inter-district, because Grafton, since Rockingham and Unified District are separate entities. So it is one of these things where the state law does say that funds can be negotiated, but we, as part of our attempt to work out a semi-formal relationship with Rockingham, and press on Priscilla and her colleagues that we want this to be a two-way street. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd like that to happen. The reality is that having a class of 8 as opposed to a class of 7 in one of our classes is it does not have a material impact on our costs. And since if there was any support costs, the LEA, the sending school, would have to pick that up quite apart from anything else, just like they would if a child went to a private school and needed special support. So it would be with that understanding, and that's why I'm in favor of this. But other people may disagree.
So is the motion to approve the transfer and charge Rockingham the set tuition rate in one motion?
I think right now it is a motion to approve the transfer. If money is required, if we require them to pay tuition, then they will have to approve the payment of tuition, and they can tie that up. And what I'm trying very hard to do is avoid a whole barrel full of cross charges back and forth.
Why don't, may I amend the motion to say that we are approving the transfer from a Rockingham student to the Westminster School without there being any transfer of funds?
I think that would be a more precise language, and if that's, you really make, which one of you two, then you can modify your own motion. Jessica, is that helpful at all? Because you can come back and say you want that money, it's up to you.
I would offer approval of the friendly amendment to amend the motion to just be, we accept the recommended transfer of student or students from Rockingham to Westminster. And then can we have a second motion to bill Rockingham for any students transferred to Westminster?
Well, you might be on, if you want to have that as a second item, we can do that. Why don't we start with the first one? Because it sounds like you'd like to bill them. So let's do that first one, and then we'll see where we go from there. How's that? So
Now we're talking about one.
we're talking about a single student at this point, and it is with the understanding that there may be a child from our district that Rockingham is going to be looking at or taking, which is why I'm trying to quietly lobby for this to be.
Okay.
I don't know if that's happening. I just know that I had a discussion with the chair that might be a thing.
So let's approve the transfer and not mention funding. How's that?
I think that's good. If we find that our colleagues in Rockingham decide that they would like to try to charge us, then we'll suggest that we can both do that, but we'd rather not, and move on. That's kind of my hope here. You know, I'm trying to assume that everybody will be grown-ups. Yes,
Jack, I just want to say that knowing that at this point, the Westminster school district directors do not have a say in this, because the schools are still governed by the unified board.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that I am in favor of it, and a year from now, it will be Westminster School District.
And indeed, I think that's a real important point. I have doubts that this is going to end up being a one-year thing. So I appreciate your feedback there. How feel you on this subject?
Oh, I agree with David Major, and I actually think that within the whole of the supervisory union, I'd actually like to see a policy where students may transfer from school to school. We're a supervisory union, we share many services in common. Does not make sense to me to charge.
When we have our colleagues in Westminster as full voting members of the supervisory union, if we don't have voluntary acknowledgement that's a good idea, we'll have the votes to make sure there's one coming up. Another reason why, as I said, I want to have our Westminster people be full voting members of the supervisory union, because it matters. All right, so with that, any further discussion? If not, I'm going to call the question. And I'll start with Jessica, because I'm seeing your face, seeing your name staring at me.
Yes.
I got one yes. Ginger.
Could I hear the motion read again? So changed it a bit.
The board will accept the transfer of one student from Rockingham School District to the Westminster School District without a transfer of funds.
I say yes.
Okay, so we get two yeses. Yes. Baker would, and then I'll be for. So it sounds like we have unanimity. Thank you. Jessup, the next item is yours. Tell me what's going on with entryway to the school. One of our at Grafton Elementary, one of our favorite.
Okay. Just moving out where it's a little quieter here. So Grafton Elementary has a single parking lot that you go down a one-way street, and on the corner, you can either take a left to continue the street or take a right to go up into the school parking lot, which has space for, I don't know, maybe 10 cars, like in a ring around it.
Right.
And you go up in the school parking lot and form a circle to do drop off and pick up.
And we are.
There was a lot of issues between parents last year. Also, it's a very small parking lot. I think if you're driving a truck, you're going to have a hard time staying in the line and getting around the lot. As long as there's nothing in the way, you'll be okay. There was also, so I had two parent complaints about disagreements with other parents, the way they were parking, etc. There was a little road rage issue at one point.
Oh,
And,
this is, okay. Hey,
but
Kathy?
also the way it is a one-way street, so the buses have to come down that street as well. And from what I was told, because of the number of people doing pickup and the size of the lot, it sometimes traffic, people waiting in line block the bus's ability to get into the school.
Okay.
And I don't know, Angela, and maybe some people from the town might want to talk about using, they've also changed where you can park. We used to park along the one-way street and walk
Yep.
our kids up to the school.
Well, I'm going to jump in, and poor Kathy thought she was going to ask all the questions, and now I'm going to ask her one. This is what happens when you show up with these things. Kathy, what is the status of what my wife and I call the community parking lot on the other side of the school there? There's about a 15, 20 parking space area back there. Can parents, teachers, whatever, park in there during the day? What's the feeling about that? Who owns that?
Is that the foundation parking?
Well, that's the question I'm asking you, because I
It
don't
is
really.
It is the
Foundation.
Wyndham Foundation.
Yeah, I've seen teachers park in there. It
Yeah,
would
should I-
be,
Yeah. Do I need to get permission or ask them if they would mind trying to get the bulk of our people over there as opposed to, grandchild,
I
as
would-
opposed,
I would talk to the CEO there of the foundation.
okay,
And it would be nice if the teachers would park there, because that would open up that
Oh,
parking area.
the teachers do park there.
Yeah,
The teachers park there. The issue is having all the parents picking up their kids at once have to line up in going around the inside of that parking lot by the school. And that parking lot also gets blocked off for like gym class and recess.
Yeah.
But it's really the lining up.
got it.
And so unfortunately on most days there's a gym class that ends 5 minutes before pickup, which means the driveway is blocked off 5 minutes before pickup still. So those parents back up the one-way street, so the buses can't get down, nor can more parents get down. And I'm not sure of how to make it better. I'm hoping that Angela, maybe we could talk to the select board. They might have some ideas about it, but it just seems like making everybody loop around that small parking lot with one entrance in and out really isn't working.
would it, think about this, could they park up on Pleasant Street and walk up the one way to get their kiddos instead of with their vehicles?
I am not entirely sure because parents, so they can, the way it worked last year with the COVID screening and stuff, parents really couldn't come to the door with their kids. So basically it was you pulled up to the door, your kids got out of the car and went in the school, and then you continued around the circle. Usually in the pre-COVID days, we parked all over the one-way streets, or even by like the mining museum down there a little bit and walked up. But I don't know if I don't know how they're planning on doing it this year. But Angela had told the parents it would be the same as last year, and it was the parents who said it really did not work, especially when the driveway is blocked off.
Yeah.
And they don't want parents congregating at the door, obviously, to have a rush of kids come out to them, but parents don't want to be parked a quarter mile away and have their kids walk alone. And I don't know how to fix it, but it seems like it's definitely not working for people.
Jessa, let me ask you a question. Okay, you've defined the problem. Would your recommendation be either that we bring in an engineer to figure out if we can redo that entryway somehow? Or would it be or would you want to have the town give us a recommendation as to, maybe restructuring that entryway in some way, shape, or form? Or is this really a COVID special issue?
Well, right now, I don't think we need to go into getting an engineer to redesign it, because we also have right at the end of the driveway to the school is a private residence and the blacksmith shop, and those driveways basically all abut each other. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room construction wise.
I was thinking more mine is right now, if you chew into that space.
I think all we need to do at this point is make Angela specifically aware that there's enough parents that say it was a problem, that it seems to be a problem. And I think we can resolve it sort of informally if we just ask the town, ask the select board if they could have somebody, they know a lot about traffic and roads more than we do to start with, and see if they have any ideas. Maybe put Angela in touch with them.
Well, I'm wondering if Angela and you might want to own that and have a chat with them. And I'm not sure. Am I seeing some sort of signal from Kathy that she wants to speak?
Yeah. Has Angela talked with the teachers in terms of the scheduling of that gym class and the scheduling of the walkers and the bussers? Maybe that has to be adjusted with some time spans in between to allow this to happen, so there's not so much confusion and congestion. Have they thought of that?
Maybe. I know the walkers were typically released before the other kids, but walkers and pickups is a good portion of the kids in school. I would guess it's close to half, maybe 30%.
You also have a percentage of those kids that are after school programs, which ends quite later, that they're picked up.
Is there any way that possibly the bus could use the U-turn of the Wyndham Foundation and do the dropping off of the busing students and have a teacher meet them and just walk them into the back door that way, and that'll alleviate the bus problem?
It's not a full, there's one in and one out. It's not a full all the way around.
But you could swing in one and out the other.
I think
one direction though.
I recall this being discussed when we were talking about picking up some of the Wyndham Foundation space for band space. And part of the issue there was that we would need to do some sort of sidewalk paving thing to accommodate kids that have ambulatory issues. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the discussion. I remember we were going that.
Right.
I didn't hear the next step. But one comment I have is that parking lot has a island coming out into it. I don't know that the bus can turn around in it. I don't think it's big enough.
Yeah, there's only the one. So Kim, I think you used to be able to drive around, but now the parking lot is like U-shaped with just that one entrance.
Oh, okay.
And there's also, when the foundation has like a weekend wedding or a Friday event, they have that's their staff parking lot. So the school staff kind of can park in the school staff is good about parking there, but it's really the parents at pickup that is the traffic issue.
This may be the case when we put this on the next agenda, even though it won't necessarily make people wanting an immediate solution, please. And bring in the foundation and ask somebody from the town to come and see if we can, figure out what the best solution is, because they're stakeholders in whatever we do. And I usually think I get a solution for everything, but I get no solution to this at all. This is the equivalent of discussing the salt and sand budget at town meeting.
Yes.
Feel completely helpless.
And I don't know, maybe, I guess, Jack, if we could just send an email to Angela and
Yeah.
and maybe if the parents out there listening could chime in, because maybe just like a 10-minute staggered dismissal, like K-3, and then 4 and 5, 10 minutes later might be enough, because there's no, in the COVID times, there's no parents like hanging out to talk to the teachers or the nurse like we used to do in the lobby. So it's pretty in and out when you're picking up your kids.
Okay.
And the back, just seeing what whoever that was that typed, in the winter, walking from the Wyndham Foundation down to the school it's really not going to work. It's just unsafe. The grass is wet there all the time. It's a little bit of a slope. Plenty of people tumble down it on a regular basis. So I don't want to make it a path for them, and it's just going to make it worse. So that's not a really viable solution. There is a second sidewalk that comes down from one of the back classrooms. But again, I don't know. I just know it's a problem, unfortunately, I don't have any ideas how to fix it.
Well, I'm deputizing you to go find a solution. It's probably not fair. Tempting, but not fair. Well, I will put this on the agenda. Well, I'll invite the folks at Wyndham Foundation and the select board to come and see if between the three we can thrash out what seems like a reasonable solution. If that's a good starting spot, and we can kind of figure it out by then, we'll have had a few weeks to think about this. We are meeting again in September fairly early, so that
I
seems
think that would be fine. Give everybody time to think on it.
Yeah. Now, we've had a couple people who came in thinking they were going to be having a discussion about the upcoming vote, and are now talking about this other business. And I see a Sally that's joined. I think at least one other person that's joined. Wendy joined. Do any of you have any questions for us?
I've been here the whole time, Jack. I've been here the whole time, so I don't have any questions.
You can only see so many names on the way the screen sets up, so you pardon me. Wendy, thank you for that. Anyone else? Because otherwise it's 7 o'clock, and I'm going to try to settle Ann's speed record for school board meetings. No, you see nothing on, okay. Well, it is 6:58. This is that time for director's comments, it sounds like to me. So that includes both Westminster and Unified District comments. Do I have any on my right?
Nothing additional from me tonight, thank you.
All right, Jessa? I think I was coming back to that.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. Lynn?
I'm all set, thank you.
Ginger?
All set.
Mr. Major?
I just want to acknowledge the patience and perseverance of all the citizens in the 3 towns. And I think we're getting to the point where we will stop having these strange elections about obscure topics and be able to deal with the business of the schools on our regular sort of town meeting center schedule.
And for me, just a reminder, the vote is on the 31st of August. It'll be at the town halls in Grafton, Athens, and in Westminster. Vote at least, make sure you vote at least once. And we'll all see you at our next regularly scheduled meeting. And thank you all for your indulgence this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor, stand up. We have a quorum. All right. Very good. Thanks again.
What is? Wait.